So did you see that when he said PTSD, did you have to kind of do an inventory and go, okay, my toxic relationship with my mom, the loss of my dad, and even, within your own story here, you share about even just the assault that happened to you on that date, as well,
Yeah.
right? I mean, there was many traumatic, Bonnie, things that have happened to you
Yes.
that if you didn't deal with them, they would just like, and it's happened to me where, my 8th month dark night of the soul depression happened because I literally did not deal with 5 major things in my life, and it compounded, and I had a fender bender with a car in front of me, and I got out, and I'll never forget this, and it was a woman in a minivan, and it was just a light fender bender, and I got out and I started shaking and I started hyperventilating. She goes, are you hurt? And I'm like, no, I don't know what's going on. She goes, no, I'm not hurt. It was just a slight fender bender. Are you okay? And I'm like, I'm not okay. I couldn't breathe. And it was like this huge, and I'm on the side of the road, and these cars had all stopped because the way I was acting looked like I had been seriously physically hurt. And it actually was a trigger when immediately I went to my doctor and my therapist. They said, you had not dealt with all of these traumatic things in your life. And that moment triggered something that compounded everything. And that's how it happened. And I went into a very dark time. But it's interesting. And I guess I'm asking you, when you saw that, did you then have to look at all of the things in your life that were traumatic and realize that that's what was happening, and then work through those?
But you know what was interesting, Melinda, is that I actually had trouble. I couldn't connect with the word trauma because I really don't feel like I had anything traumatic. So my therapist said, okay, was there any moments where you felt like hurt or wounded? Oh, I was like, oh gosh, well, where did I begin? Those are words that I felt like I could connect with, hurt or wounded. So
Okay.
it just began with one. So because it's so important to see a therapist, because I always describe it like there's you're in the jungle and you need a guide that's been through the safari. He can kind of guide us through, because I think we would all be so overwhelmed, right? But he said, start with the earliest memory you have of feeling like wounded or hurt. And so that story I shared about the cutting up of pictures was one of the first one that surfaced. But interestingly enough, only after I shared that one, then another one surfaced. So it's not like I had a field of them. It was just first one. And then it's interesting, as our heart opens up, this is called Sweet Like Jasmine, because in jasmine tea, dragon pearl, it's like this really closed tightly bud of jasmine flowers that gives the fragrance, but it only opens when the tea is warm and it's under heat. That those petals open up. So it's almost like this petal. It's like I first began with one,
Beautiful.
and then as I did, my heart began to open, and I started feeling, and this memory started surfacing. So like the one on sexual assault with date rape, that one, I seriously had just tied a nice pretty bow around it, because first of all, I told myself, okay, I don't want anybody to know, because what nice Christian guy would want me for a wife? Because
Oh, honey, that's the first thing you think of. Isn't it not about my own safety and self, but oh my gosh, who is going to want me because that has been done to me? I get that. Anyway, go on. It's so fascinating. That's our initial response.
Yes, because he was a Christian. He was a Bible study leader. I'd known him for basically the first year of my freshman year. So I really felt safe. And obviously the people will read about in the book, but I was not safe, apparently. And it was sexual assault. It was date rape. And at that moment, the only way I could put myself together was to tell myself, God makes me new. God makes all things new. I just use all this scripture to say, I'm okay. It's under the cross, and now I'm pure and white as snow. I would just tell myself all this truth, because I wouldn't want to deal with the truth of what happened and what does it mean to me. And so I just kind of okay, that's fine. And I didn't even deal with it. It's really denial. So it wasn't until I got...
But I want to say, that girlfriend, Emma, I actually got emotional.
Please.
Because every woman needs a girlfriend like Emma. But I think when you called her and you just said she didn't lecture or anything, you should have known, why didn't you? And there's a lot about safety, but I love how she says, first of all, take a deep breath. I'm here for you. You're going to be okay. But then she just talks about that, like, this is amazing. I don't see you any less, Bonnie. You're still the beautiful girl I know and love, and nothing will change that. God will use this in your life.
Yeah, I mean, I cry now
Like,
because
I cry. Actually, I was reading that, Bonnie, and I was like, for someone to affirm that to a woman versus how so many times we point fingers and say, you should have known, why did you, blah, blah, blah. We don't need that. We know that. We don't need that in a time of trauma and hurt and woundedness. But for Emma to kind of present that, you'll be okay. I'm here for you. God knows that. It doesn't change anything about you. You're still beloved and valued. Like, oh.
Well, yeah, she didn't
Beautiful.
ask me any details. Like, okay, how did it happen? Where
Yeah.
were you? It's like it takes us out of like our emotional space. Instead, she just said that, and I was just crying and crying. I'm like, I don't know what to do, Emma. Who's gonna want me? I don't know what to do. And in that moment, when you told me you read it so emotional, because when you read her words, doesn't it take us back, the moment where we're hurt and wounded? The voice of the friend, it will always stay in our hearts and minds, and it brings us back to that memory where we feel we're safe. And she, as I was crying and asking her all these deep questions, she did not recite Bible verses. She just said, Bonnie, I don't see you any less. You're just as beautiful. And she said, God is going to use this. God is going to use this.
I know, it just got me chills. Yes.
And so it's like right in that moment, I felt like completely loved. She knew what my fear was, and she's like, I don't see you any less. And how did I know that? Because she didn't start preaching at me or teaching me or telling me what I need to do or pray or whatever. She just said it, just stated the truth. Then she pointed me. She's like, God is going to use this. Right then and there, that change, it could have been such a devastating thing. And that's why I want to write this book, because every woman has an experience that what you went through, that valley, is the very encouragement somebody else needs. And so when we hide it, we can't be the light. How can we say God heals the brokenhearted, He lifts up those whose souls are crushed? But then how? How does He heal the brokenhearted? So someone needs to hear your story. Someone needs to hear your story. So, I didn't know this was going to happen, but when I became a mom, I realized all of a sudden all these things I kept hidden. It dawned on me as I stumbled upon my own birth certificate. I was looking for a birth certificate to sign up my child to go to preschool, because I had just the baby and I needed that older kid to be in preschool for a couple hours. To make popsicle stick art, I need that breather. But I stumbled on my own birth certificate. I was like, wait a minute, I never look at my birth certificate. Do you look at your birth certificate?
No, I don't even know where it is.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I don't even know where my birth certificate is right now. Actually, I was thinking about that when I was reading through your book. I'm like, where is mine?
I know. I just stumbled on it. I guess it was just tucked in there somewhere. And I was like, oh my gosh. I looked at it and it said that I was born in a hospital called Chinese Hospital. Like, why is there a hospital named after an ethnicity? I was very curious. And that's the first key that we want to be empowered by. We need to be curious. And so the second thing, it dawned on me, because, I was telling you, once I was 18, Melinda, I didn't care where my dad was, right? But suddenly, it never occurred to me, but my son is going to grow up one day and he's going to ask me, where is grandpa? Why am I missing a grandpa? And when did we come to America? Well, guess what? I don't have any answers. And suddenly it hit me really hard. That sense of shame I told you about, hiding and not having a story, I realized I don't want to pass that down to my kids. I need to know, good, bad, or ugly, why my dad left. Is he dead or alive? I need to get answers so that my son doesn't carry the shame that I carried of not having a story. And so that began I wrote it like a mystery. I hope you felt, Melinda, it was a page turner.
Yeah, and it was good. And you're a fantastic writer, like storytelling, because actually visually I was in those spaces. Like, I saw the cutting, I saw you opening up the filing cabinet. It was really good.
Oh,
yeah,
thank
really
you.
good.
Yeah, so then this is what this book is about. It's like when I finally went back to face my fears and find out, uncover the family secrets that I'd run away from, and try to find the Father, what happened and what did God show me about my true worth and the identity that He wanted to rewrite. So God can rewrite our stories. He can. He doesn't want us to erase them. He wants to rewrite them with His love.
Yeah. And I don't want to give away too much of the story because I want people
Yeah.
to go and get your book, Sweet Like
Yeah.
Jasmine. But I want to just maybe some just short answers on, you know, the book is really about, you know, what I mentioned earlier about these you want to get unstuck and out
Yes.
of these 3 areas. So talk to me about just perfectionism. How does that come about, and what have you been doing to kind of stop that cycle of perfectionism in your life?
Well, I think that perfectionism before, you know, I never really identified myself as a perfectionist. I felt like I was a planner, but I said perfectionism is really just hiding and the desire to pursue, where I felt like my story was never good enough. I always felt like I needed to make changes in my life so that it could be more normal or more beautiful. And I didn't know that my life as it is already, there's beauty in it. God makes beauty out of brokenness, because that's what these stories shaped me. So I think, you know, how to let go of perfectionism is first, and I want to actually read a quick excerpt, is
Yes, please do.
okay.
I love that.
Oh, please, thank you. Is I had to, this became my prayer. I asked myself, what would I say or do if I were to be more honest than I am comfortable with? So I want to ask our viewers and our listeners, what would you do differently if you were to be more honest than you're comfortable with? Or what would you tell somebody? What would you say to yourself if you were more honest than you're comfortable with? Yes. And so
Good.
there is a moment, I want to read an excerpt where I had to be more honest than I'm comfortable with, because I think when we're not willing to go there, that's when we tell ourselves other stories. We make up other stories about the truth so that we can feel like we can, you know, be okay. I told you I didn't get married until my 30s because I didn't fall in love in my 20s. Now, I'm a very sociable person. So I was like, there must be something wrong with me, because why am I not falling in love? And by the time I hit 30, I was like, gosh, most of my friends now are already married or have kids. And I was like, maybe I'm destined to be alone the rest of my life, because maybe I never had a dad. Maybe this is my calling, is to serve God as a single person. And then the best I can get out of life is just to serve others. So I put it in my mind, I will choose singleness. But then to my surprise, I was thinking I would marry an Asian person because they would understand all the dysfunction that happens in my family. But it turned out there's this blonde-haired, blue-eyed guy that showed up in our 30 singles ministry. And he, one weekend, July 4th, he's like, hey, let's go ride the roller coasters, you know, with our friends, our brothers and sisters. And this is the secret. I was 30, in my 30s, girl. I said, I didn't tell him this, but my mother prioritized family. So she said, every holiday, you need to spend family time with me. You don't put anybody else above family. And so I told Eric, I didn't tell him that. I just said, oh, you know, I don't think I'm going to be able to make it. And most guys would just be like, oh, okay, that's cool. But Eric was different. Eric's like, why? What are you doing July 4th? You don't have to work. And suddenly I couldn't tell him, oh, yeah, because my mom is dysfunctional and she would rage at me if I went somewhere. So I decided, you know what, maybe I can go. So I asked my mom, and this is the scene, what happened.
Okay.
Ama, that's Chinese for mom. This is just a simple, fun weekend to go ride the roller coasters. I haven't dated anyone since college. I'm 31 years old, Ama. Maybe you're right. Maybe it won't last, but I like Eric. I won't know if I don't try. I've taken care of you my whole life. Why can't you be happy for me? I started crying because I was more scared than anything. Scared that I said it so bluntly. Scared because I'd never spoken to my mom like this. How stupid can you be? Ama said. A man comes along and pays you little attention, and you think that makes you special? She scoffed. You've forgotten who you are. You're Bonnie Lee. You're my daughter. She screamed at the top of her lungs, her eyes wild with rage, wailing with all her might like she was blowing all the air out of her lungs, her face turning purple, her hands balled up in a fist. If I thought I was scared before, I was beyond terrified now. I felt I was teleported into a horror movie. I thought she would storm out. I would hear her grab her car keys and slam the front door, as she often did as a little girl, leaving me alone at home by myself. Instead, Amma tore out, thundering into the kitchen, and I heard drawers opening and slamming shut. The next thing I knew, she flew back into the room with the glint of steel, brandishing a large pair of scissors in her hand. She shoved my sliding closet doors open, violently yanking my clothes off the hanger. She was shaking as she pulled apart my clothes by the neck openings to tear them up, cutting up my clothes, running the blade of the shears against my clothes with one hand and tugging them like she was strangling the life out of them. Everything you have, everything you are is because of me. Without me, there would be no you. She screamed it as she clawed at my desk, clutching whatever she could get her hands on, ejecting my books, notebooks, swiping and throwing them all over my room in a confetti of flurry. I stood there choking in my tears, unable to move or breathe. I was confused. How can something so simple become so very wrong? A thought hit me like a siren. Something is really, really wrong.
Wow, Bonnie.
And we all have moments like this. You kind of like carry along, and you're like, I'm okay, I can handle this. I don't want to trouble the waters. I don't want to I don't want conflict. I don't want things to blow up. And we just kind of like tell ourselves stories. We just take all that burden onto ourselves. And there is a moment, whether it's a job that is not right, whether it's a relationship that is just not healthy, whether it's a girlfriend that is actually stabbing you in the back, it's somebody at church you're serving with, and it's just something is not right. There's this moment, but you're so afraid. What would it mean? And now I'm going to leave you on that cliffhanger, because I would like friends to buy the book and find out what happens, but I'm not going to leave us on an emotional cliffhanger. So what I did is I journal. That's like my one safe place as a little girl, Melinda. My journal was where no one could tell me what to do, tell me what to think. And it's in that journal, as I went through, the therapy as these memories surfaced, I asked myself, what is it I would tell my younger self? And what is it that God would say to me? So let me share this with you. I put it straight in the book. Sure. I'm unfiltered, and it's to encourage our viewers and listeners today. You are worthy of peace. Beloved, you will have to make a very hard decision one day to choose peace over fear. You'll have to keep choosing to believe that you are worthy of that peace. You will have to leave, even though you've given your all to stay. Peace isn't freedom from conflict. Peace is trusting God enough to make the right decision in the midst of conflict. Choosing peace will mean you will need to let go of something or someone you've held on to in order to take the hand of God, who promises to lead you beside quiet waters. You will need to count the cost and set your face like flint to leave what is not healthy, because to continue staying with someone or something that is abusing you or hurting you emotionally, toxic to your well-being, hurting your body, your heart, and your soul, is breaking the heart of God. To choose peace, you will need to be honest with yourself. There will come a time for this honesty, and that time is now.